All by myself, don't wanna live all by myself anymore. False. I'm just happy being by myself. I'm an introvert. And so being in front of a camera and not needing to be around people, totally fine with me. So John, happy to be on the show with you next week. We'll hook it up next week, but I'm all good being by myself. So Peter, thank you for that wonderful intro on Twitter. It was amazing. Love that song. And but no, I'm good. Let's do this. Let's jump into the content. All right. So today on You Want Answers, we're going to deal with a couple retired certification questions. And we are then going to look at a couple things from the forums that jumped out at me that I wanted to just dive into and provide some clarifying comments on. And so let's do this. All right. That flare suppression needs a little help. Okay. So the first question that we're going to look at is something that is from the 101 certification test. And often when you're preparing for a test, you're thinking, the super hard answers, and so you spend a whole lot of time on the very complex stuff, and then you get into a test and you're like, oh man, this is such a basic question, but I'm not sure that I know the answer. And so yeah, this is a 101 test, and it is a fairly basic question. And Silva, nice, thanks, sir. And then Parveen, hello, how are you doing? So the first question here that we're going to address is, what is the OSI layer used for communication in a switched network? Okay, so we have a keyword that is one of the answers there in network, and another keyword there is switched. And so if we look over here to the right, we see the 7 layers of the OSI model. And you start at physical, then data link, then network, then transport, session, presentation, applications. So you're climbing the stack. So if you're thinking about a switched network, typically you're in layers 1 through 3 in a switched network. Sometimes switches are doing some L4 switching, but primarily switches work at L2 and L3. Historically, switches were only L2, which would be the data link layer. But the first things that I would drop off of that right away as I'm analyzing a question would be session and transport, because I know that in a traditional switch network, I'm not going to be above layer 3. And so I would knock those out right away. The next two that I have to look at are network and data link. And so I see a question like this and I see a switched network. Likely the answer that they're going for is data link, because that is the traditional switch layer. However, switches have had L3 capability for so long, this is maybe a little bit of a confusing question, and maybe that's why it was retired. Don't know why it was retired, but that's possible. But the answer that they're going for here is data link, and wow, that doesn't look good at all. I need to see why my PowerPoint fills are not doing so hot. But anyway, that's supposed to be green, and it's supposed to be highlighting the data link layer there, but instead it's doing some weird things. Oh, maybe it's because it's the green screen effect. Maybe that's why it's going all the way back to the background. Maybe I just figured out my problem. But yeah, so that would be question 1 on the OSI layer. And so drop in the comments. You guys have any other maybe basic questions that you have always known, but you go into a test and you're thinking the complex stuff, and then you just kind of blew it. I've done that on very basic routing protocol. Like RIP is one of the easiest routing protocols to learn and understand. And I went into my CCNP test on the Cisco side, with all the stub complexities of OSPF and ISIS and all these things, and then I forgot the very basic things in RIP. So let me know what your big fails on easy questions are. And Kim, hello, how's it going? All right, let's go on to number 2. The Big IP administrator needs to upgrade a Big IP system to the latest release. While booting into the updated image, the following message says, the configuration is not yet loaded. If this message persists, it may indicate a configuration problem. So the Big IP administrator suspects this message appears because the service check date on the F5 system is older than the license check date of the updated software version. What TMSH command will output the information needed? Okay, so this is around licensing, and this is on the, I think this one's from the 201 if I recall correctly, and the what they're getting at here is like basic upgrading process troubleshooting. And so the TMSH command here, if you look through these, you've got show sys software, show sys license, list sys software, and list sys service. Listing is mostly associated with configuration objects, and the license is not a configuration object. So I would knock those two things out right away. But on the other two, show sys software will show a big listing of things, but it's not going to show you the license information. However, show sys license absolutely does. And so that's your answer on this test question. However, does anybody have an idea of why this question is flawed? Anybody want to comment on that? All right. The question, in my opinion, is flawed, not in that it's not getting to an answer, but the administrator, in my opinion, has already failed because they updated their software version without first checking the license. One of the things that we recommend as a best practice is that anytime you're going to do an update, you always you touch your license updates ahead of an upgrade. That way that you'll get feedback in front of an upgrade rather than after one. So that would be my big concern with this question. All right, now we will move on into some things that we found in the forums. And this one's interesting. Can I run TMSH commands inside an iRule? All right, so I'm going to go over to that question. And he says, I've added set node name, HTTP header value test, pool member, IP equals, and he wants to do a TMSH list from TMSH within the iRule, and then set that. And so that's very interesting. You want to be able to get system information from the data plane. And it is technically possible. You can do it through some very shady workarounds that very likely are not supported by F5, the F5 support team. And so if you had an iRule like that and your system was causing problems, they would likely ask you to remove that iRule before moving forward in a troubleshooting scenario for why your system is having problems. That said, what they're really looking for is the DNS resolution. And so Dario here mentions that you can use the resolve lookup command, and that's defined out on Cloud Docs. So that's a great answer from Dario. But then we got a comment here from Renee saying, please note that the v15 resolve lookup is deprecated and no longer supported. Okay. The first part of that is true. The second part is not true. When we deprecate commands in the iRules, it doesn't mean that they're no longer supported on systems that have those commands. It just means that they are marked for removal. And so once that command is deprecated at some future version of the of TMOS release, that command may not be there. And so you don't want to rely on something for the long term that might go away. It doesn't mean that in your current processes you can't use that. But it is a supported function. So if that command is on the Big IP and it will be supported in that capacity. And so that was the first thing in the forums that jumped out at me. And The next one that jumped out at me is why is an active configuration not recommended by F5? And that was kind of and granted, this question is from 2016, but a comment was made on it this week, which brought it to my attention. But I wanted to be clear that active configurations are, it's not that they're not recommended. The solution here goes into details about that. It's not that active isn't recommended. It's just that with the device clustering, it's recommended that you have a standby. So if you have two machines, an active, in that case, we do recommend that you have a third device that is a standby. But you can still run active, and it is a supported configuration. It's just from a best practices standpoint, when you have boxes actively on two devices, unless your capacity planning processes are very detailed in that you're not going to go over your 50% capacity on both boxes. The challenge would be that if you are at 80% capacity on both boxes and one of them fails, then all that active traffic has to go onto one, and then you're going to have reduced capacity on that one to be able to handle your traffic load. And so that's why that recommendation is there. But it is possible to go active in scenario. And personally, I like, even back when we just had active standby versus the traffic group standbys with device clustering, or device service clustering, DSC. When you have an active and a standby box, you don't always know that standby box is ready to receive traffic. And so part of your operational procedures, if they aren't, should be that you fail traffic over occasionally, so that that other device is able to take traffic, and it will spin up if the primary fails. With DSC, some of that is obviated because you have your traffic loads running on at least a majority of your devices, and you still want a standby in that system. But even in that case, you want to flip traffic over to it occasionally, just to validate that box is ready to serve traffic. You have commands that you can run that will indicate that it's ready to receive traffic. But I grew up most of my childhood in Missouri. It's called the show me state. And I just like to know that those things are going to work. And so that was the other thing that kind of jumped out at me today in the forums. We could do more in the forums, but man, we are super early with that. Well, I'm going to move on to my other stuff. And a while back, I put this. I'm going to hide that banner since it's kind of going over. Give me a second here. Take that off. Okay. And so a while back, I put this little command championship together and forwarded it out to some people. I'm not a big basketball fan, but I love March Madness. And you get 64 teams together in a few weekends, and anything can happen. And so my thought was, since I didn't get to see that with all the COVID stuff this year, I thought I would go through and do an iRules command championship. And we can do this today. I'm going to go through the left side of the graph. The next time we do you want answers, we're going to come back and do the right side. If you guys have anything you want me to talk about, or questions that you have while I go through this, drop them in the comments, and we can punt and go a different direction, and we can jump on anything that you found in the forums that you thought was interesting, that you'd like me to add color commentary on. But let's get started on this. Okay, so I broke up some top iRules commands that we see in a majority of the iRules, and kind of paired them up so that it wouldn't be like a slaughterhouse of some of these. And it was pretty surprising. Some of the feedback I got from people that did this had some interesting champions, and so we'll get to that next month when we do you want answers, and reveal the victors of some of the people that have filled out brackets. And if you guys would like a bracket, drop that in comments, and I'll get you a bracket to fill out, and you can have some fun with that. Just kind of thinking through, how do you approach this? Am I doing this on the commands that I like to use? Am I doing this on the commands that are more powerful and or more performant? Do you just like the name of them? Like, when my wife fills out the basketball, it's usually about, does she like the name of the mascot? Or she likes the color on the college shield or whatever. Incidentally, she normally, does better than me in the basketball tournament by using that information versus me pouring through stats and head-to-head competitions with other teams. So, but anyway, so let's go through this. We've got table and active members. And so the table command is your access to the memory system that iRules uses. And so you can store information, all kinds of information in that table related to the connections that are coming through the box. So if you've used the session command is also accessing that same memory space, but it's less powerful than what table has access to. And you can have tables and subtables and all of that. And all right, so before we get in there, man, I will butcher that if I try to pronounce your name, but why is it so difficult to manage existing big IP configurations using big IQ? With a greenfield implementation, it looks easy and straightforward, but I guess companies have big IPs first, then big IQ. We can take that offline. Shoot me a message with your specific concerns, and I will get that to the big IP the big IQ team, and address your concerns, because I don't know exactly what the pain points are, but we can address that and get you help, because we definitely want everything, especially big IQ. It's there to manage the big IPs. And so, if you're having pain points, that we want to be able to help with those frustrations. But I get your point between greenfield and existing, and so let's take that offline, and I'll work that with you on the side. All right. So table and active members. So we talked about table. Active members is an interesting one. You can take a pool and send an active members query against that, and it'll give you the number of members in that. That's really useful for doing things like the maintenance pages. So if you want to serve a maintenance page from iRules, so you can take the number of active members, or if you want to be able to adjust loads, you can see how many are available in the pool and then act accordingly. So my winner there is table. Table's far more powerful and used far more often than active members, but active members is still a great command. All right, and the next one here, we have a last hop or next hop. If you're doing a lot of network-based traffic switching at Mac layers, it's nice to be able to know where your next hops and last hops are, and you can define the next hop there, retrieve the last hop, and so those are good commands for doing your lower level traffic steering with iRules. iFiles is your ability to upload files like an HTML file or a JavaScript file, even like a TFTP binary. You can upload those things and then use iRules to serve those. And so iFiles are pretty powerful. And so I used iFiles there. And Josh, you're saying your point is importing configs, importing big IP files into big IQ. Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty sizable environment. Okay, and okay, P Silva giving Josh a shout out there. All right, so if and HTTP URI is this next head-to-head competition. If is a conditional, and it's super important to be able to make conditions, so that's pretty powerful. HTTP URI is also a pretty powerful accessor for information in HTTP. I like the HTTP URI in that case because a little bit further down we have switch, and I like that condition better because as you scale, switch is a little bit more important. And okay, I've got so Aditya Wyatt shows pending while trying to sync F5 active standby in the device management. Manual sync sucks. Yes, getting all your ducks in a row with device service clustering is, it can be a little bit of a challenge to get it going. Manual sync is not fun, and in fact, it's if you get into a manual sync, it's easy for human that human error to creep in. And so, there are some gotchas with that. I will, if you have, there's a knowledge base out there that deals with that. I think Aditya, I'll look that up. I don't know it off the top of my head, but there are some gotchas and tricks. It might even be in the operations, the big IP operations manual. But if you don't find it there in the operations manual or in a knowledge article, I'll look for it too. And hit me up. Pasilva put my email address up there, and then we'll try and tackle that. All right. So the next one here is stream replace and sideband. So stream replace allows you to, without a whole lot of introspection in the iRule itself, it allows you to just have match strings and then replace strings. So it's pretty powerful to be able to change content as it's flowing either client to server or server to client. And then sideband is the ability to then take the data plane, and a request comes in to the big IP, and then with that request, then you can go off big IP to go query some level of information, get an answer, and then based on that answer, either replace some content or just block that content. So sideband is amazingly powerful there. So that one's going to move on. And then class and where is. We've got the class command is your accessor to data groups. So whether they're internal or external data groups, that's where you can store keys or keys and values and be able to pull that stuff into iRules. So whereas you would have your if statement, you might, I'm sorry, that wasn't related. That's my switch later. But class allows you to pull all that information in. So super, super powerful. And then where is your it's your geolocation information. So class there, way more powerful than the where is command, although where is definitely important. And then Sushant, hopefully I said that right. Why are F5 exams so difficult to pass out? Do you mean, are they so difficult to pass or so difficult to find a facility for? If you'll clarify there, I'll weigh in on that more. All right, after an HTTP redirect. For me, the after command, if you're not familiar with that one allows you to have a delay. Way back in the day, there was, you would have to do something like a for loop in order to wait for something. The problem with that, with a for loop, is that you're doing it in line, and because iRules run on an event loop, you're delaying other traffic by running your for loop. After parks that connection and allows other traffic to be handled. So after's far more powerful than using a for, and far more appropriate than a for loop. But HTTP redirect, there's some things you can do in policy with redirection, but you can't do permanent redirects in policies, and so you have to drop the iRules for that. So HTTP redirect there. HSL is the high-speed logging. This is where you used to have actually it still works in the log command. You can log it to a destination, but that's a single destination. With HSL, you can log to pools, and it's tailor-made and highly performant for that purpose. And actually, I'm going to switch myself over to the other side so that I'm not blocking the stuff here. All right. And so I put that up against switch. Switch is really powerful because it's also a condition. but it allows you to group conditions and have glob style matching and all that. So you can get really clever for that, and plus it's way more performance on bigger data sets of conditions. So if you don't want to have like an if else chain that's 100 long, so switch helps with that. And so for that, since I didn't choose if, I'm going to choose switch going forward there. And then finally, for the first round here, SNAT or SNAT pool versus TCP collect. And the SNAT pool, from a configuration standpoint, allows you to mask your IP addressing on the outside, so that you don't have to necessarily change your routing infrastructure on the inside. And so you can either do that for a SNAT automap or choose a particular SNAT pool to match those IPs internally. TCP collect allows you to collect all the TCP information that's coming in, and then you can act on that TCP data at the binary level and make those changes. So whereas HTTP, the HTTP commands have already they're built to understand the HTTP protocol, so they can pull out the HTTP URI. With TCP collect, you can pull in all that HTTP payload and then act on that directly if you want to. So it's pretty powerful. Plus, for protocols that are TCP that we don't have decodes for, you can do that at that TCP layer. And so TCP collect going forward. Josh says switch is great, but I have to look up its syntax. Yeah, I'm not immune to that. I'll write, whether it's writing iRules or Python or being forced to write some JavaScript, I always have the reference stuff up because it's all the niche parts of those commands that get lost on me. All right, so that was round one. Round two here, we're going to go between table and iFile, and for me, both are powerful, but table is the way to go. Between HTTP URI and sideband, I'm going to take sideband over that because with TCP collect, I can get that information if I really needed to get that HTTP URI. And then between class and HTTP redirect, I'm going to take class. Between switch and TCP collect, yes, I need switch. And I guess my logic fails at this point because I put HTTP, I didn't put HTTP URI forward because I could use TCP collect, but TCP collect didn't move forward. So now I've lost that capability. So my logic doesn't hold all the way through this bracket, but what can you do? Between table and sideband, I guess I built that out a little too fast. Table, and then class, and then ultimately table. So in the final for me, I got table out of the left side of the bracket. Next time we do you want answers, we're going to move to the right side of the bracket and name our championship. So I'm curious, reach out to me on social or, drop here in the comments. I'm curious, what are your favorite iRule commands? Which ones are the most frustrating for you, or which ones do you just not understand that much? And we can follow up with sessions in the future and look at that. So anyway, we're about out of time, and so we are done with content. I think we'll just wrap here a couple minutes early. Thank you guys for joining me today. And next week we are doing with John and I on DevCentral Connects. We are going to have a couple guests, and we're going to talk about the automation toolchain. So that's onboarding and the application services, AS3. We'll have DO, AS3, and telemetry streaming. And so we're going to talk about not just the overview of why the declarative interfaces exist and why a switch from imperative interfaces to declarative interfaces was made, but also we're going to have the Eric Chen with us to give us some hello world examples. So if you really don't understand a whole lot about automation and how it works and what makes it powerful, and you haven't dipped your toes in the water yet, come back next week because we'll have a compelling show for you to really see not just the intro and how to get your feet wet, but really experience the power of automation. So join us next Thursday at 12:30 Pacific. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next week.